From a resounding victory less than 2 years ago to some of the lowest approval ratings for the UK Prime Minister.
I mean, he really had to go.
Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
A 76% disapproval rating just ended Keir Starmer's premiership, and it is worth understanding exactly how that happened. In July 2024, he walked into Downing Street with 412 seats, the biggest Labour majority in decades, and the kind of public trust that most politicians never get. Less than 2 years later, the country had made up its mind, and there was nothing left for him to argue with.
So Keir Starmer had to go. He was weak. The one time he finally said something that resonated, he retracted.
To understand what went wrong, you have to start at the very beginning. Because the problems did not start halfway through, they started on day one. When most leaders come into power, they do one thing instinctively. They give people hope. They say things are going to get better, that the hard years are behind us, that there is a brighter future ahead. Starmer did the opposite.
He promised change, but the only thing he changed was his mind repeatedly.
We want to ensure that as we go forward, more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel payments.
He was an embarrassment on the world stage.
He stood up in those early weeks and essentially told the British public that things were going to be painful, that difficult decisions were coming, and that people needed to brace themselves. He even said in one of his first major interviews that the government was going to have to be unpopular. He said it like it was a badge of honour. And the public heard it exactly the way you would expect. If the person you just voted for is already telling you things are going to be awful, you start believing them.
So he resigned and is leaving a parting gesture of an almost £5 billion black hole in defence, and has left the country in a worse state than he found it in just.
By September 2025, just over a year into his premiership, the polling numbers were already devastating. Only 14% of people approved of the government's record. 69% disapproved. 2/3 of the country told pollsters that Labour was out of touch, unclear on what it stood for, weak and untrustworthy. 77% said they did not trust Labour to keep its promises or help with the cost of living. These are not numbers from an opposition smear campaign. These are what ordinary people told independent polling companies when asked how they felt about the government they had just elected.
Britain's satisfied with Keir Starmer. Overall, 18%. You can't even drink or smoke anymore when you're 18%. You're below that line. That's not good. How about his own party, the voters who voted him in back in 2024?
And the broken promises did not help. One of the most visible ones was winter fuel payments. Starmer's government cut winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners, something that hit older people on fixed incomes directly in their pockets and directly in their sense of security. Then came the U-turns. He changed his position on Gaza so many times that nobody could keep track of what he actually believed. He promised to smash the gangs responsible for small boat crossings in the Channel. The boats kept coming. The asylum backlog grew to its largest ever size. Migrants were moved out of hotels, but the problem did not go away. Every promise that quietly disappeared made the next one harder to believe.
But he's got two problems: energy and immigration and crime. But energy and immigration. And he's really hurt himself very, very bad.
Then came the prison early release scheme. To deal with overcrowding, the government released prisoners early. 70% of the public opposed it. Then immigration policy. 67% of people told YouGov they had a negative view of how the government was handling it. Then the NHS. 64% said the government was managing health services badly. And all of this was happening within the first year. This was not a government that ran out of steam after a long period in power. This was a government that arrived exhausted and never recovered.
Bush, back in 2008, he came in one poll with a 20% approval rating. Well, I got news for you. 20%'s low, but it's higher than 18%. Keir Starmer is less popular right now than the least popular American president ever.
By January 2026, the YouGov numbers came out, and they were extraordinary. Starmer's net favourability rating had hit -57. To put that in perspective, that figure matches Liz Truss, the Prime Minister who crashed the British economy in 49 days with a disastrous mini-budget that sent mortgage rates through the roof. Truss destroyed the economy and got a negative 57. Starmer did not crash the economy. He just crashed the public's belief that any of this was going somewhere. In some ways, that is a harder thing to recover from because, at least with an economic crash, you can point to specific things that went wrong and fix them. With a collapse of trust, you are dealing with something that is much harder to rebuild.
Her and Keir Starmer have single-handedly destroyed the country and the economy in the past 18 months. And I think many people, the vast majority of Britain, will be very happy to see them go.
The people around him could see it happening. Labour MPs started talking privately as early as autumn 2025, just over a year into the government, about whether Starmer could actually lead them into the next general election. That conversation should not have been happening that soon. But it was live and running, and the reason was simple. The polls were not just bad. They showed no sign of recovering, and for an MP whose job depends on winning their seat at the next election, a leader sitting at negative 57 is not just a problem for the country. It is a personal threat to their career.
His legacy is him ripping pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, not being tough enough when it comes to Islamic extremism in this country, not prescribing the IRGC, not getting involved in the war in Iran.
The local elections in May 2026 made everything worse. Labour lost control of 35 councils. Nearly 1,500 councillors lost their seats, roughly 60% of everything that was up for election. The BBC's projected national vote share put Labour at 17%, joint third with the Conservatives. A party that had won a landslide less than 2 years earlier was now polling level with the party it had just demolished. Reform UK and the Greens were the ones gaining ground. Starmer tried to reset. He brought in Gordon Brown and Harriet Harman as advisers. One Labour MP summed up the reaction inside the party in a single sentence. Not sure voters in Wigan, Wandsworth, Salford or Sunderland voted Reform because they thought we needed more advisers from a different era of Labour politics. Then the cabinet started falling apart. Health Secretary Wes Streeting resigned on the 14th of May. 4 junior ministers, including Jess Phillips, quit. Then Defence Secretary John Healey resigned over disputes about defence spending plans. Then Armed Forces Minister Al Carnes. Then another aide. The people who were supposed to be running the country alongside him were walking out the door, one after another. And every resignation was another headline confirming what the polls had already shown. This government had lost its own people before it lost the public.
The one thing he was hailed by others at being good at, and now he's giving Andy Burnham advice on how to handle it.
You have to care about finding a lasting solution to the situation in Ukraine. You have to care.
The BBC's political team put it simply and honestly in their analysis of his final days. Andy Burnham looked like a winner and Keir Starmer looked like a loser. That is fundamentally why the handover happened. Not because of one specific scandal, not because of one catastrophic decision, but because across dozens of polls, hundreds of interviews, thousands of conversations between Labour MPs and their constituents, the conclusion was always the same. This is not working and it is not going to start working.
Burnham is the self-described king of the North. The North is a more working class part of Britain. This is someone who is really a working class populist. That's how I'd most describe him. He's a former Labour cabinet minister. He has worked in Westminster.
Burnham had won the Makerfield by-election on the 18th of June 2026 with nearly 25,000 votes and a majority of over 9,200. A seat was vacated specifically so he could return to Parliament and challenge for the leadership. It was the first time since 1965 that a by-election had been created specifically to give someone a path into Parliament. The moment he won, Starmer's position became impossible. His own side was running toward the new man. Burnham had the nominations. He had the momentum. He had something Starmer had not had for over a year, which is that people seemed genuinely interested in what he might do next.
But Andy Burnham, look, I spent quite a bit of time with him the past couple of days. I actually helped his wife back out of her car.
Oh, wow.
Her car park when I was in Makerfield. And I only mention that because as much as he is a lefty and you want to hate them, there is a real air of...
Starmer announced his resignation on the 22nd of June 2026. In his final interview, he sat in the study at number 10 without his jacket, and he tried to make the argument that his legacy was not just 2 years as Prime Minister, that he had taken Labour from its worst defeat since 1935 in 2019 and brought it back into government. That was true. He did do that, and it matters. But the BBC journalists who interviewed him noted something telling. When asked directly what he had done wrong, he did not really have an answer. He talked about the question changing, about Labour MPs now asking who could win the next election rather than who could rescue the party. But he could not or would not look honestly at his own failure to give people a reason to stay with him.
Keir Starmer, UK Prime Ministers with his ratings as bad as Keir Starmer's, all of them lost or resigned before the next election. That is, their party lost in, of course, the parliamentary elections. So Keir Starmer being this unpopular, he'll try and climb out of that hole, climb that ladder, but that ladder is...
That is perhaps the most honest summary of what ended his premiership. Not that he was a bad person. Not that he did nothing. The NHS waiting list did come down. The economy did grow. Rail nationalisation happened. GB Energy was set up. A trade deal with the EU was reached. These are real things. But none of them added up to a story that the public could connect with, believe in, or feel any hope from. And without that story, without that sense that someone in Downing Street actually understands your life and is taking you somewhere better, the numbers will always tell the truth eventually. In Keir Starmer's case, they told it very fast, very clearly, and very loudly. 75% of the country said no. And in the end, there was nothing left to argue with. Argue